Look, maybe it's always been true. I honestly can't say. Maybe it's always been the case that there have been a bunch of people out there who felt like government ought to be doing all of these wonderful things for them, and that the government was the solution to, if not all, a big chunk of their problems. Let me just tell you that that's not the case. And let me tell you, too, that this is something that even the founders realized was, in fact, true. In fact, they didn't even think in those terms, to be fair. They didn't think about the idea that government could be the solution to all your problems, because there wasn't really very much government to be the solution to all your problems. And so when I talk today about the idea of legislative logjam, and that's what I'm going to talk about today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. By the way, I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and I'm glad to have you on, whether you're on Rumble, on YouTube, on the podcast, or somewhere else. I prefer people to view me on Rumble, obviously, but it's your choice. You've got to make the choice that you're going to make. Today is Wednesday, the 21st of April of 2021. And like I say, what we're going to talk about today is legislative logjam. And I wrote a little note, as I typically do, and my note says basically, I'm sorry to tell you this, particularly for those who want government to do something, and I emphasize do something there, but as a rule, government activity should be slow, deliberate, and extremely limited. And I want to add some thoughts to that, of course, but the first of them that I really want to add is the higher up in government you get. So if you're talking about city government, it should be less limited, though still limited. If you're talking about municipal government, even more limited than city. If you're talking about county government, even more limited than municipal. If you're talking about state, more limited than county, right? And so forth up the line until you hit the federal, where it ought to be at the absolute minimum possible impact. It should be very slow, extremely deliberate, and extremely limited when you get to that federal level, right? The thing of it is this. Government wasn't designed to be a solution to all of your problems. Government was designed to deal with a very limited set of problems that it had better capacity than about anybody else to affect. That's what it was there for. So this idea that a lot of people have that government should be just this well-oiled machine cranking out regulations and fixing things left and right, this idea is an insane idea. And the founders were against it. I tell people periodically, and I say in my videos, that I think one of the saddest things that I can think of was the amendment, I don't remember if it was the 17th or which one, to the Constitution that changed the election or the existence of senators' place in office from an appointment to an election, to a popular election. That senatorial body, that bicameral House design, was made in order to set the House of Representatives and the Senate against one another on purpose. It was done on purpose. People used to say something along the lines of the soup boils over in the House of Representatives and it cools down in the Senate. They didn't say it in exactly those terms. I'm just giving you the basic idea. The idea is when something was in the House of Representatives, it was all let's go, extremely, ready to do the thing. And when it got to the Senate, it was hold on a second, wait, let's think this through. That was what was supposed to happen. That was how that was supposed to work. It was intended to be a sort of a log jam in the process. But more importantly, to begin with, pretty much every legislative body in the United States initially didn't meet for the whole year. They met for a part of the year. And the reason for that is they weren't seen as that important. It wasn't critical that they do what they did. That's not how that was supposed to be, people. It's not. So they would meet for a short term of the year. And then on top of that, they were seen as having an extremely limited scope based on, who they were supposed to be serving. And I'm going to say that word again, serving. They weren't supposed to be telling people what to do. They weren't supposed to be lording it over people. They were supposed to be serving their constituents at whatever level, whatever kind of legislative body they were, whether it was municipal ordinance writers or whether it was a legislature at a state level or legislature at a federal level or wherever. Those legislators in those bodies were intended to be servants to the people for the area that they represented. That's what they were supposed to be for. And what they were supposed to be doing was doing the absolute minimum necessary to accomplish the things that their constituency desired, so long as it was within the base foundational principles and concepts that make the country work. This is what was supposed to be going on. You can argue this all you want. And never, oh never was it supposed to be easy to write law. It wasn't supposed to be easy, people. It was intentionally difficult, okay? Because if it's easy to write law, people will write law and write law and write law and write law and write law, and you'll have a whole bunch of garbage on the books. But if you make it difficult, people really have to think about exactly what they're putting through. I've worked for several entities. I'm a software developer, and I've worked for several entities. And when you put something into a development environment, environment where you were making new stuff, right, it was fairly easy to do. Getting it into a UAT environment was a little bit harder. Not horribly, but a little bit harder. Getting it into a production environment, the place where everybody, by the way, UAT, user acceptance testing, that's the place where everybody tests to make sure that software is working like they want it to work. Websites, whatever it happens to be. Mostly that's for websites. The production environment is where everybody's using this thing, whatever it is. And getting things into that production environment was intentionally difficult because they wanted for you to be sure that what you were putting into that environment, they want for you to be sure what you put in that environment belongs there. It's sufficiently mature, sufficiently well written, sufficiently well thought out, sufficiently well documented for it to actually be usable and to not break the first time somebody puts a finger on it. Well, the same thing applies to putting laws out there. Those laws that get out there shouldn't be easy to put out there. No, they should intentionally be difficult. And if they're not, it's messed up. Things are wrong. Because you should have to really think and really work to get that thing through. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is to make sure that the thing that you're putting out there is worth having out there. But another is there are going to be people who disagree. And if they disagree with you, then you're going to have to either find ways to get them to agree or make some other compromise with them to make sure that it makes its way out the door. That's not bad. That's not problematic. That's not how that is. So when you hear people saying, oh, the Congress of the United States is horrible because they're not passing every law in the known universe. Good. This is not how that process was supposed to work. It's not supposed to be a process where everything is easy and I can just push things through. That filibuster on the federal level, that was put there for the filibuster, right? Was put there for a particular purpose. It was put there to keep people from passing laws that shouldn't ever make it through. That requirement for more than a simple majority to get legislation through a lot of the time, that was on purpose too. It wasn't supposed to be easy to get it through. They made exceptions for certain things where a simple majority would be sufficient. And then when it got to the president's desk, he could stamp that veto stamp on that rascal, and that was just fine, and it would take a supermajority in order to get it past him or her, right? It would take a supermajority to do that. All of this was on purpose. All of it was intentional. All right, I'm about out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and call this good. You can tell I could talk on this for a while. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and call this a day for what I've said so far. Again, this has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt today. is Wednesday, the 21st of April of 2021. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, the 22nd of April, 2021. Thank you for everybody who's come on Rumble, on YouTube, and on the podcast. Thank you for being here. Especially thank you to those folks who are here on Rumble. Today's subject has been legislative logjam, and I hope you've come to understand what it is that I'm trying to say where that's concerned. Legislation shouldn't be easy to pass. That's the long and the short of it. Tomorrow's subject is going to be campaign finance reform, and you might find that I've got a bit of a unique take on that. You may not. You may decide that what I say is ho-hum, but I have a feeling you might think that it's a little bit different than what you would have suspected or expected. Maybe not, though. In any case, that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, and hopefully we will see you on the next Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.